What's up, nerds? Welcome back. As you heard me mention in my last video when I reviewed Evil Ernie issue 3, I enjoy stories that deal with the supernatural and evil forces and stuff like that. It keeps my attention. That's why I did a review for Evil Ernie. That's why I'm wearing a Darkness t-shirt. So let's kind of keep within that same vein of storytelling by talking about Gunslinger Spawn number 5. So if you will remember from the last issue, basically Gunslinger Spawn was fighting with a chick who was sending dinosaurs at him, and then a whole bunch of clowns and a Violator showed up and told her to basically skedaddle, and then he started trying to convince Gunslinger Spawn to work with him. Gunslinger Spawn wasn't going for it, so he ended up hanging him. And then, because he still wants to work with him, he cut him down, and then he just kind of left him there. So that's where we're actually picking up, where we can see he's still passed out on the ground. We can see someone talking, off panel, saying that it's what happens when humans, instead of those born in hell, are picked as hell spawns. And then we can see where they put his hat down, saying, now we wait. And then it says nearly an hour later, he finally wakes up, where he takes like a breath and he starts like coughing or whatever. So he wakes up and sees, oh, what do you know? The clowns are still here. So that's where one of the little clowns says something unintelligible that we wouldn't be able to understand, I guess. And then Clown is saying, I know, my pet. I thought he might die too. It would have crippled my plans if he had, and I've been waiting too long to have that happen. So he says, so give him space. He's going to flop like a hooked fish till his body resets. Especially this one. He's even weaker than I thought. And again, another clown says something. He says, because unfortunately, pet, we need this one alive for a while longer. Gunslinger says it says Gunslinger's recovery takes longer than anticipated. And so he's telling him, like, welcome back to the living and everything. Please tell me you're not going to faint anymore. And he's like, no, I'm just getting warmed up, fat man. So, of course, that makes Clown laugh. And he's telling him, like, oh, you're so brave. You're just hilarious and shit like that. He says, but this has dragged on for too long. I'm still waiting for an answer to my offer, though I'm beginning to have doubts. I need someone strong at my side, so get your act together. So he's just like, oh, you want an answer? All right. He says, listen up then. We're never going to be partners. But Clown's just like, yeah, I disagree. And so it says Gunslinger knows he can't win this battle, but he steels himself anyway for one last assault. Because he'll be damned if he's going down without a fight. And we see where, yeah, he goes and tries to tackle Clown, but it says a fight, Clown is more than prepared to take on. So he just kind of like knocks him back. And then it says, and so these two titans rage on. But as we're going to see, it's not really going to go Spawn's way here. It says Gunslinger holds his own against his 2,000-pound enemy. 2,000 pounds. God damn. And then it says, but a harsh reality sets in when, after mustering everything for one last blow, he punches him in the nose. And then it says his opponent shrugs it off like a mere slap. And we can see where he's even kind of like licking at his blood with a smile, which... menacing. Anyway, he goes into like punches him back and he says, you think I'm still the same old clown, as like Gunslinger Spawn goes like flying back, and then he just yells out that he's not as he punches the ground. And then it says fissures in the ground snake out a quarter-mile before stopping, attesting to Clown's newfound power. And yeah, I would say that definitely proved it. And then it says Violator comes to check on his master, ready to join the fray at his bidding. The Clown holds him at bay. So he's just saying, like, I appreciate your concern, but don't worry, I've got this under control. And then it says he approaches the large oak from which he had tried to hang Gunslinger, and then he picks the bitch up and just throws it. Not at Gunslinger Spawn, just throws it, just to prove that he could, which, alright, point taken. Anyway, we see where Gunslinger is back up, putting on his hat, and he says, let's finish this. So it says, slowly the clown creeps forward like a tiger locked on its prey. Two warriors ready to explode. Then Clown just starts laughing and then goes and puts his arm around Spawn, and he's just like all kind of surprised and shit. He's like, you know what? For a Spawn, you're okay. I'm beginning to like you. He says, because I think we have lots in common. Neither of us was Hell's first choice. They never thought we were good enough. For me, it started right at the beginning with the first symbiote. The one we turned into the Hellspawn costume, which is something they've kind of talked about, I think, in the Scorched and So far, yeah, that's the only one, except for like the main Spawn book. But yeah, it's basically that Plague Spawn one that was apparently their first attempt at it. Whatever. So he's saying that he helped to build it, but instead of giving it to a Hellborn, they chose humans instead, and we got relegated to training them in hopes one would prove itself worthy. But they failed. They all did. Eventually, Simmons will too, because he doesn't have the capacity to understand his true destiny. So he's saying, like, at the beginning, he freaked out too, just like the rest of them. Like, you should have seen his face, like, when he realized he didn't need a heart anymore, which it kind of gives us a little footnote where it says that was way back in issue number 4. So he's saying, I knew then he wasn't going to succeed, but my lord, he didn't want to hear any of it. And out of anger, he turned me into a living joke, a clown, before I was sent to Earth to train Simmons. But then he's saying, like, recently he upgraded himself, and with a bunch of God's outcasts, he almost took over Spawn's symbiote, and with it he could have unlocked the dead zones by himself. But it says then Simmons turned it nuclear, and without knowing it, created the time rip. So that's where he's saying, I went in and you came out. And then finally he ended up landing like centuries in the future, literally having to fight himself, his future self, to survive. Eventually, I tamed it, then found my powers had somehow become enhanced. I used them to influence those around me. When I stumbled across an imprisoned Kincaid, he begged me to free him, saying he knew how to return back here to Earth. And he's just telling him, like, I only had one condition. I wanted the soul of every child he'd ever killed. So it just says, yeah, he gladly, he traded them. And then this is where we can see, you can tell from the art basically what ended up happening, but he does go on to say it. I animated their souls into these minions you see. So yeah, all of those little clowns, those are all the abused, tortured souls of children, which Gunslinger does kind of sum up by saying, your army is a bunch of dead kids. He's like, something like that. So Gunslinger's asking him, like, I'm curious, why don't you just take out Simmons yourself? And he's telling him it's not that easy. Simmons has grown into the most powerful Spawn yet. I attack him head on, he'd sense me coming. But you, he wouldn't suspect. Another Spawn looking for the same thing I want. The key that lets me get back to hell. So Gunslinger saying, wouldn't have taken you for the cowardly type that just wants to unlock the dead zones, then run and hide. But he tells him, I already told you, the treasure I'm looking for lies on the other side, in hell, Malbolgia's empty throne. So he's saying, like, I'm willing to pay handsomely to get there. So Gunslinger's like, you mean by sending me home? He's like, now you're getting it. It'd be my first act. So he's just saying, well, I have a hard time believing that. But Clown, I guess, kind of convinces him by saying, I could have killed you when you were passed out. I didn't. Ask yourself why. So Gunslinger's like, all right, you know what? You have my attention, but I need to know something. And then he goes and picks up a stick and starts drawing in the dirt. And he's telling him, this is our current time. This is 1864, where I came from. Can you get me back to 1862 instead? So Clown's kind of asking him, like, you want to go back earlier in time? And he's just like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. And we can see in the background where there are wolves starting to, like, come up. So he's saying, I think that's possible. And then we can see even more wolves are coming up. But Gunslinger tells him, I'm not asking if it's possible. I'm asking, can you do it? If not, I'm gone from here. So, of course, that gets Clown's attention finally with the wolves. It says he turns around to see he's not the only one who commands an army. So he's kind of telling him, you can leave when I tell you, understand? And he says, so, tell your dogs to back off. I don't like threats. And then we can see where things are starting to get, a little more heated, and says tensions build in the participants. Monsters, wolves, minions all begin to salivate. And he tells them, I didn't call them here. He's like, doesn't matter. They think you're their master. Get them to obey. But unfortunately, it's just too late, where it says too many primal instincts are at play, and one of them is finally triggered. So that's where we see the wolves all start just attacking and shit. It says with that, all hell breaks loose. One thing I will say that I like here, because I am an animal lover, even if it's, vicious wolves who would probably tear my throat out as soon as let me pet them. I do like that you don't actually see any of the wolves being killed here. I'm sure some of them did die in this little fracas or whatever, but you don't actually see it. And I can live with that, because this battle scene is just more satisfying that way. I'm someone who enjoys seeing, like, death and destruction and gore, but usually just more so when it's people. I don't know if that says something about me, but I don't really like seeing it when it's animals, like any animals, quite honestly. So I'm fine with it that they didn't really show any of the wolves actually being killed here, even though, like I said, I'm pretty sure maybe at least one or two of them died or were grievously wounded. So it says, with no apparent winners asserting themselves, the battle devolves into a wild scene of savagery. And of course, Clown isn't willing to risk more casualties. Gunslinger comes to the same conclusion and yells the same order, and they both just yell out, "Stop." So, of course, everybody stops, and then Spawn says, "We stay here, more wolves will come." So Clown's just like, "All right, then let's leave." And he asks, "If I join you, what's my job?" And I'm going to stop for a second because when I was reading this, I looked at Clown's body right here, and I was like, what does this remind me of? For one thing, it seems like very weird that his head is that small compared to how big his body is, especially how long his legs are. But I kept trying to think, I was like, what does this remind me of? Because I felt like I've almost seen something close to this. And then it hit me earlier when I was listening to music. He's kind of built like Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse, the singer. He kind of has that same thing going on, just like this big, thick neck. And then, he's still like big everywhere else, but you just notice like the neck seems to just go up almost into the forehead all the way. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I was looking. I was like, oh, that's what he reminds me of. Anyway, just a quick little side note that I had when I was reading this. Anyway, so Clown is saying, for now, there's two things. One, make sure Spawn stays alive. He dies, we're both screwed. And two, the way to do that is to become his friend. Or at least get him to believe that's true. So Spawn just says, all right, if you do your part, then I'll do mine. And kind of seems like we have an accord for now. But that's actually where it leaves off for the moment, where we can see Gunslinger appears to be in league with the Clown. I don't know that that's going to last. It could very well be that, Gunslinger Spawn is trying to run his own game. It might very well be, or he might, because as we've seen, he has this prior commitment. He lost his love. And so he's trying to get back to her, and that's why I'm assuming he's trying to get back to an earlier time, because he wants to try and, go save her before she got killed. So it could very well be, that situation that he is actually going to go through with it if it actually gets him back to saving her. Could very well be, or he might know that Clown is like, lying to him in some way and won't actually help him, so he's just going to pretend to play along and then hope that he figures out some other way to get back home. Because, I mean, Clown said it's possible, so, or that he thinks it's possible. So that probably gave Gunslinger at least enough of an, indication that it can be done. But the fact that Clown didn't just straight up say, yeah, I'll do it for you, kind of tells him he won't actually hold up his end of the bargain. So he's going to end up, betraying Clown. This is just me. This is wild conjecture. I have no idea. It could go any number of ways, but that's the way that I kind of see it going in my head. He's going to pretend to go along with it, and then it'll probably either be revealed the Clown was lying, and then that's when he'll turn on him, or he's already decided to turn on him, but to, like, pretend he's playing along for now. It could go either way. We'll see what ends up happening in the end. But yeah, that's about all that I have for this. Again, I don't know what the big change was. I think it was the coloring and some of the inking, because from the first 3 issues, 4 and 5 have looked different, but they look great. Like, the art in there looks incredible. Won't lie about that. So, I don't know. We'll see what ends up coming from this. I look forward to reading more of this series. I actually thoroughly enjoy this series, so we'll see what ends up coming from this. But that's going to do it for me on this review. So, if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. You do the notification bell. If you'd like to share it, go ahead and share it. I appreciate you. But if you're done here, then go and read a book. And if not, then I'll see you on my next video.